Suresh Prabhu ji. Next.
Thank you, sir. Sir, this is the first budget presented by the UPA, and therefore everybody is interpreting the election result which put the UPA into power. And my friend Mr. Upchand Pal the other day was describing that it's a defeat of the liberal policies, that neoliberal policies that the previous government and the governments wherever they are pursuing such policies, those governments have been defeated. Probably that is why the liberal feeling is so strong that probably this budget itself, which is presented for the first time, has used liberally the words like rural development, agriculture in such a big way that we also anybody will get swayed. But unfortunately, the provision that is required for these areas is not put, so therefore there is no money where the mouth is, and therefore unfortunately this budget again does not fulfill the type of expectation that we raised before the budget was presented. So it is true that this particular side of the parliament where we are sitting now in opposition, we lost power and the UP has come into power. So why this phenomena is now developing in the country? It's every time a government, the ruling party goes to the election, it is very good chance that they will lose the election, except the honorable exception of West Bengal, where they are not lost power, and my friend Mamata Banerjee will explain why. But probably barring,
don't allow the people to cast the vote.
Probably barring that, all other states face this phenomena recurrently, and therefore we have to be really interpreting it that every time.
And you will continue repeating.
No, you cannot. You cannot.
Madam, no, not to be regarded. Not to be regarded. Madam, address to the chair. Address to the chair, not to the individual. Please don't. Please sit down.
Sir, I can show the document where the opposition has got 0-0.
This is not going to be regarded. No regard, not to be regarded.
They have got 1,000 and we have got 0-0.
Not to be regarded.
We have got 30% vote.
Whatsoever you speak without my permission, whosoever speaks, not to be regarded.
Don't fall.
Okay.
Don't fall.
Sir,
don't fall.
Please sit down. Please sit down. Sit down. Please 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 don't let him speak.
Don't shout.
Don't fall. Don't fall. Don't fall.
Let this be decide.
Yes, because we decide.
There is nothing on the record. Record पर तो कुछ गया नहीं. Taji, please sit down.
But you does not know that when Suresh Prabhu is speaking, you should not shout.
Okay.
ममता जी आपको बैठ जाए.
It is my duty to support his views.
ममता जी बैठ जाए. प्रभु जी कंटिन्यू करें आप.
अरे 30% वोट मिला तो एक सीट मिला, ऐसा कभी हो सकता है? पूरा झुकड़ू लूट किया, पूरा नहीं किया है.
Not to be regarded.
Speaker, sir.
At least you should have shown the honor to listen to him.
जयप्रदा जी आप ही बैठ जाए.
Honor all these things. You can't.
जयप्रदा जी आप ही बैठ दो. बैठ जाओ.
Speaker, sir.
Everything from you.
This is not the proper. This is not the proper. Please sit down.
Speaker, sir, I request you. Speaker, sir, I request you. For the new members, they should use properly what they are speaking before they should think about the honourable member, and the unparliamentary words one cannot use here. I respect you and I am appealing you.
Record पर तो जा नहीं रहा, कुछ जाएगा नहीं. Please sit down.
Sir, as I was saying, this budget has been presented amidst huge expectations that have been raised, and we are sorry to say that many of the programs that the government has announced in this budget are nothing but repetition of the program that the previous government was pursuing. I must say this is a merger and acquisition of the scheme which are pursued in terms of merging several schemes of the previous government and acquiring them under new name and repackaging and marketing it. I of course congratulate the finance minister. He is a very intelligent, capable person for doing it in a manner that gives an impression that huge investment has been increased, the amounts outlays has been made for rural development and agriculture, I will go and find out how unfortunately the expectations have not been fulfilled. Sir, the unorganized labor, which National NCMP talks about 93% of the workforce of the country, unfortunately, there is no provision for unorganized labor in this budget. So fishermen, we have 9 huge coastal states. The fishermen living around that area, there is no mention about a fisherman either in the NCMP, unfortunately, and also in the budget. So fishermen who also really deserve a new deal, a good deal, have got a raw deal. So population, which is one of the major problems of the country. In fact, the per capita incomes are falling and not growing enough, only because despite growth in our GDP, the population increases so much that per capita incomes really fall. And therefore, the real crying need is to come out with a population policy which will really control and abate the population. Unfortunately, none of the two documents, NCMP or the budget, talks about population control. I think there should have been some incentives provided in this budget for population. So organized labor, which again deserves a good treatment, and the NCMP talks about it. The most organized labor, one of the ancient traditional industry in the country is that of textiles industry. The National Textile Corporation, which employs large number of workmen, working in Mumbai, working in Ahmedabad, working in many other places. Unfortunately, there has not been anything really provided for them. Many other public sector undertaking units who got the golden handshake, the employees of the National Textile Corporation, the textile workers, they really did not get the type of deal that they deserved, and therefore even organized labor, particularly of the NTC workers, the textile workers in city of Mumbai, have really suffered as a result of that. The working community were expecting that probably the provident fund rates would be increased, and therefore we are also hoping that there will be some announcement, of course not related to the budget, this is something different. But I think probably we should hope to receive something that will be good news for the workers to come. The programs carried out by the NDA, my good friend Major General Khanduri is present here. The program that you mentioned, which was carried out, the program of rural roads, rural connectivity, the program of finding out whether to solve the problems of India of floods, drought, flood syndrome, drought syndrome, which has been plaguing India for a long time, and we are trying to explore the possibility of solving that problem. And even today, there have been large number of people are suffering because there is too much of water in Bihar, Assam, and some part of West Bengal. At the same time, the other parts of the country is suffering because there are no rains. So therefore, that possibility also we are thinking of exploring that. There is no mention about it, and probably the government is not thinking of dropping it. Also, there is no mention about Sagarmala project to develop our entire coastline, in the process develop the lives of the fishermen, which was announced by the previous Prime Minister on the 15th of August last year. There is no mention about it. In fact, sir, the Honorable Finance Minister, when he presented his budget to this Parliament, when he was the Finance Minister in the previous United Front government, he had said that America is not rich because America is rich because they have roads, and they don't have roads because America is rich. We thought that probably that philosophy will be taken forward. There will be more provision for roads, and we will be able to connect the different parts of India, the villages with the mainland, and unfortunately, there is not enough provision that has been made for that. Sir, urban poor have also been ignored. Mumbai, which is home to 63% of the people live in slums. Mumbai, which is now one of the most populous city of the country, 63% of the people in Mumbai, they live in slums. Unfortunately, there is no enough provision for the rural urban poor in this budget, though 40% of the revenues of the federal government, this government, comes from city of Mumbai. And therefore, they again have been deprived of getting something from this budget. So handloom weavers, which is the major secondary activity in rural areas, they again have not got the type of deal that we were expecting. So the industry, and the Finance Minister talked about automobile industry, and I really congratulate him for that, because that's an industry which is going to be a flagship industry for the country, which has been really growing after liberalization, and we are seeing how liberalization benefits a particular sector. Now that industry, which is not only competitive within the country, but has become a sourcing hub for the global industry, I think the similar way, there could have been a deal which should have been given to pharmaceutical industry. So I remember when I was the Minister of Chemicals and Fertilizers, we have started a scheme of providing 150 crores for for research and development. Probably this particular budget should have provided for that, because that one industry after IT can really become globally competitive industry and can earn a lot of foreign exchange, create job opportunities, also solve the healthcare problem by developing new molecules, new drug delivery system, and that is what unfortunately has not been provided for. Sir, I congratulate the Finance Minister, of course, for making a provision for social sectors. This is something which is a welcome measure in this budget, because, sir, we know we always talk about China, and China has developed because there has been a social sector development. So Mao Zedong has really laid the foundation of an economic reform, because still from 1949 to 1978, the social indices of the Chinese was improved so much that probably an economic reform could be launched. So people give credit to Deng, what he did in 1978, but a foundation of that was laid during 1949 to 78, and therefore this particular budget talks about social sector, and I really wish to congratulate for that. Sir, our former Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi had said that when 1 rupee is sent by the central government for world development programs, probably 10 paisa to 12 paisa only reaches the final destination. Probably we are hoping that to identify, having identified a problem, we'll be able to now take a corrective step. So probably what we really need to do now is to reform the administrative setup, which consumes so much of money, so much of pilferage, so much of leakage, and finally the quality of service that end user gets is something which is deplorable. So therefore some change in administrative reform, which is really required. In absence of that, we are preparing a rocket, but we do not have a rocket launcher. The rocket is a program that we have talked about, but rocket launcher is the administrative support. If we do not change that, probably many of our schemes, though well intended, well meaning, will not reach the final destination as we have seen in the last few years, and therefore there is unfortunately not much has been done on that part. In fact, the Prime Minister had addressing the nation through the broadcasting, he had said that this is a major problem. Probably we are hoping, having identified the problem, there will be some provision made in that. Sir, the petroleum subsidy in this budget has been reduced by 3,014 crores. I don't know whether this means that now there will be totally, the budget is now not providing anything for it. So probably having dismantled the administrative price mechanism, whether we are moving towards a system whereby the market will determine the price that the consumers will have to pay. Is this a policy? I would really like to know. We also have not really identified there is a problem, that there is a man-animal conflict. Mr. Balu was an environment minister before. After me, I was a minister of environment. In city of Mumbai, many places, there is a growing man-animal conflict. We need to protect forests, we need to have wildlife habitat. Unfortunately, this growing man-animal conflict is creating an impression that animals don't have place to live, and probably the men only can take over that. We needed more provision in this budget to make sure that such man-animal conflicts are avoided. Unfortunately, there is no provision with that. So education says, which has a multiple charge. It is going to be charged not just once, but on many people. A same person will have to pay taxes at many places wherever he is a recipient of a service. And therefore, it is really going to target that, or is going to affect that part of society which is most vulnerable, which is going to use the services in a manner they require it for day-to-day use, and therefore they will be very adversely affected. I am sure the government which cares for poor, the government which cares for common man would certainly look into it in a different way. Sir, transaction tax is something else which I think as Finance Minister said, he has an open mind, he is looking at it, so I would not like to comment, but something like this needs to be relooked, because this is not a transaction tax, it is not charged on profit. This is irrespective of whether you earn profit or loss, the transaction tax still will have to be paid. So actually speaking, if it is a tax which is not related to profit, it should not be really in the Income Tax Act. But in any case, it's something which really needs to be looked at, because large number of people, particularly day traders, who live their earning on a day-to-day basis, are deprived of a job only because this transaction tax will affect them. But I'm happy that you are looking at it afresh, and we will await for your final response to this matter. Sir, there are 7...
So I'm waiting for an opportunity to make a statement. I hope I have the opportunity on Monday to clarify this question of transaction tax. I've heard all of them, and surely we will come back with a statement which satisfies every player in the market.
Thank you very much, sir. And I think this is a responsiveness which will really be appreciated. Sir, there are 7 parameters which the Finance Minister has mentioned in his budget. And he said that the guiding economic principles for formulation of budget are these 7 economic parameters. So there is no doubt that none of this member in the House will really question that. This is something which we really need to do. This could be a national program of 7 economic parameters. But unfortunately, when we go through these parameters, we have to find out whether each one of these parameters which has been mentioned and the budgetary provision that has been made, whether it meets with the objective of those parameters. So first, the Finance Minister wants to maintain growth of 7 to 8% on a sustainable basis. Most welcome. So in fact, China has been having a growth rate of more than 10% for several years. China's challenge is now to reduce the growth rate. Our challenge is to increase the growth rate. How China has been able to increase the growth rate and why we are failing to do that,
and we are still struggling. At just first year, we have got more than 8% growth rate. So what is the growth rate that we are going to hit, and how are we going to do it is an important question. Some of my friends, while talking yesterday, they were saying that in fact the growth is not something we should be aiming at. I don't know, but let us say the reform decade is a decade of 1990s, where the growth has been 5.8%, and the growth in the 70s was 2.9%. So 2.9% growth rate became 5.8 only during 90s, and therefore I am not sure whether how this growth is going to be attained. There is no spelled out policy. For example, since last year, the growth was really attributable to 52.4% of domestic demand. Investment accounted for 25.6%, and external resources 2.4%. So what is the challenge now? Are you going to create more domestic demand, or you are going to have more investment? If you want more domestic demand to come in, there is no incentive to spur the demand. There is no incentive to make sure the demand for goods and services which will increase and which will spur demand. And therefore I would like to certainly know from the finance minister, in fact he knows that China has now the exports of $500 billion, an economy of almost $1.5 trillion, and if we are going to be making sure that we want a growth rate of 7 to 8%, which will all support, how are we going to do it is a challenge, and we'd like to be enlightened on that, because there is no really, besides setting objective, there is no way that we can really make it happen. So second objective is to quality basic education and healthcare. Again, the question which we'll all support, the proposition which we'll all support, but sir, we have given such slogans in the past. We have talked about health and education to all for a long time. Unfortunately, we are not really reached it. So one of the reasons why this is not happening is that we must find out the quantitative cost, quantitative analysis of why the healthcare service as well as the educational institution, where is the lack. Instead of providing money, which is not a problem, which is required undoubtedly, and I welcome that they're increasing the budget for both. But sir, unless we have such analysis on ground level situation, and all that is required is given at the same time. We have to give a classroom, we have to have a teacher, we have to have a blackboard, we have to have a salary for the teacher. If we keep providing in piecemeal basis, finally the service suffers and we are not able to get what we really want. And therefore, unless we do this quantitative analysis, I will urge the finance minister and the government to do this first. Providing money later on, and giving money of course is a welcome measure, but in the absence of that, we'll really have a problem, and therefore I would request them to do this. Sir, in fact on the last 5 years, the expenditure on both health and education had doubled. So despite that, we have a problem like you identified. So therefore money is not an issue. The issue is the healthcare delivery system, the educational dispensing system, and therefore we really need to do that. I would urge the government to come out with a white paper on how many schools and institutions do not conform to the type of quality that we expect from them. And then only we'll be able to know that. Probably both the ministries of HRD and health should try to give this to us. Sir, unfortunately, India ranks now amongst 127 in the country of 174 as far as the human development indices are concerned, and therefore there is no denying the fact that we need more allocation, we need improvement in services, but mere allocation without attendant challenge that is facing will not really result in the result. So second point, third objective, generating gainful employment in agriculture, manufacturing and services. So this is something again, nobody will really told to challenge. We have got 4 crore 31 lakh registered unemployed in the country today. Out of them, 70% are educated. They are past 10 plus. And therefore, we must have the profile of this unemployed and then decide whatever jobs you want to offer. Because if we just offer the jobs which the unemployed are not interested in, we will not be able to get them. So the profile of the unemployed and the type of job opportunities that we are going to create must match. Otherwise, they will not be really serving the purpose that what we are creating jobs. And we should not create the MAC jobs, which is now popularly known as the hourly jobs, but the jobs which are more stable, which will give more stability to the employees. And therefore, this we really need to do. And for that, we must also keep in mind that the economic survey points out that there is a declining labor intensity in manufacturing. So therefore, we have seen more GDP and less job creation. So we have described this phenomena as a jobless growth. How are we going to create more GDP at the same time create employment is a challenge? And we would like to join in with you if you come out with a policy as to how we are going to do it when unemployment is going to increase by 1.9%, and therefore the Kerala.
Prabhu, may I interrupt your speech for a minute? A very sad news to communicate. The Honourable Member, the House is shocked to learn about the tragic fire accident at the Lord Krishna School at Kumbakonam near Chennai in Tamil Nadu, resulting in the death of about 75 children and 3 teachers. About 30 persons have also reportedly been injured in the accident. This House deeply mourns the loss of young innocent lives in this accident and expresses profound sorrow on this tragedy. We convey our heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families. The members may now stand in silence for a short while in memory of the departed. Please take your seat. Yes, Mr. Prabhu.
Sir, we are saying that when unemployment is going to grow by 1.9% per annum, and therefore the additional incremental growth has to be much faster because we have a backlog, we have more people coming to the market for unemployed, and therefore this is a challenge which we really need to say. Sir, Mr. Mohan Singh was mentioning about Kerala. So unfortunately, Kerala has the least growth in employment. The employment growth is 0.07%, the lowest in the country. And in fact, this is again a matter of this. We must really find out why this is happening, because Kerala has the highest social indices, whereas in respect of that, they are not able to grow and create more employment that is required. Therefore, how we should be doing it? Probably is it because the economic policy that we pursue in Kerala, is it responsible, or something else needs to be found out? But something, despite having such good indices, we are not able to grow. So therefore, we really need to look into that. So I would request the finance minister to study the Chinese experience, where in the low-end manufacturing, whether it's in footwear, stuffed toys, or it's garments, there's a huge employment has been created, which actually can counter this growth, jobless growth, because they will be able to create more jobs opportunities. For that, more incentives need to be provided. Unfortunately, we don't find any mention about that. Other industries, construction, where the multiplier effect is 1:100. One job created will have a tremendous impact, and this is what even the NC Gupta committee of the Planning Commission has identified as one of the sectors where job creation can be high, and therefore we really need to do that. The BPO, business process outsourcing, is another area, and particularly when 70% of our educated and employed are 10 plus educated, so therefore they are the ones who are the right candidates for the BPO, and therefore they also can be involved. Unfortunately, as you know, some of the BPO companies are facing tax problems in which the deemed income is sought to be taxed, and we need to remove such barriers so that more jobs can be created, because India is no longer the only destination where the BPOs can be located, and therefore we need to look into the other areas. Other areas I think should be service exports, not just service domestically. China's service exports account for $50 billion, and therefore I think that's another area which we really need to promote. So third objective of promoting investment, again there is something which nobody can find fault with, but what is the GDP composition that the finance would like to have? How much of the investment we like to make in services, in manufacturing, in agriculture in the next 5 years, so that the investment should grow? There has to be a clear strategy, I would feel, should be defined and should be spelled out, which will really help us. But sir, in this economic survey, we have mentioned, and this is something which I would like to know, whether this you think for investment is a cause or a constraint. It says that some rigidities of labor law acting as an impediment to efficiently building large firms, is this a problem? If this is identified as a problem in the economic survey, I would like to know what could be the response to that, because if this is the problem, we really need to do that. But sir, having done that, the capital expenditure this year is down by 20,000 crores. When we are spelling out as our cause for investment is a major objective of investment, 20,000 crores is a drop. In fact, the capital expenditure to GDP ratio has come down to 2.96% from 4.05%. And therefore, we really need to do this. Again, if you want to promote investment, we'll have to have savings. Otherwise, we'll have to only promote investment through borrowings. If you want more savings, the savings rate of 24%, in which the households contribute the most, the corporates, of course, rank second, but now suppose, for example, let's take household first. So if you want the households to save more, there is no incentive in this budget to promote savings. And if you do not have savings, how do you attain investment? The corporates again, and I will come to it a little later, when we are expecting more top tax to be collected from the corporates, how do you expect that they will save more, at the same time they will also pay more? So this is something is a contradiction. And third, the government is a dish saver, and how are you going to arrange the dish savings of the government is also the challenge to increase the savings rate and to promote investment, which is an objective. Sir, we are seeing there is a lower graph, as again point economic survey, I will not take the time and read it out, between savings and investment. So it's not just savings, we are now finding a way into something else. So all the savings are not getting the investment. There's a growing gap between savings and investment, and therefore we really need to look into how we can channelize the most productive savings into productive investment, and also look at why there is a growing gap between FDI approvals and FDI disbursement. There has been the FDI approval rate and the final disbursement rate, there is a growing gap in that, and in fact we really need to do that. So last time the finance minister had spelled in the United Front government had said $10 billion as a FDI target. This year the common minimum program does not mention about it. So is it that $10 billion? I know, but it is not mentioned. So probably the quantification is not deemed necessary because it is no longer an objective, but we really need to do that. And therefore, sir, another interesting point which I think finance minister must look at it, that the bank deposits, which are the source of saving, there is a growing increase now in demand deposits, and they have grown by 30.3% last year, and time deposits have declined by 15.3%. So therefore there is a lacking, we don't have long-term instrument to have long-term investment, and therefore we must have some provision to make sure that we'll be able to create more long-term tenable savings rate. So fourth objective, the objective of 100 days employment in each family. Sir, how much is the amount required for this? One estimate made by economists says the amount required for this is 50,000 to 60,000 crores. If it is not, of course, I'm very happy to say how it is going to be done in less amount, we'll be happy. But sir, if it is 50 to 60,000 crores required, how much amount is provided? In fact, for rural development this year, the provision is 11,456 crores. The provision for rural development last year was 15,519 crores. This year, the rural development provision is down by 4,000 crores. So rural roads, 1.6 lakhs habitations require rural connection. Money required 1,30,000 crores, but unfortunately there is hardly any provision for increasing that. Of course, I know part of the money for rural roads come from the diesel cess that is collected, but this has again an employment elasticity, and therefore it should have been done. And I would request the finance minister, if you are actually thinking of coming out with like this, use water programs for giving this 100 days employment. To desiltation, etc., can be linked to this 100 days program. So at the same time, we'll be able to create employment, and we'll also be able to solve the problem of the water in many areas. So probably unless we come out with a program like this, we'll not be able to do it. The allocation for KVIC is welcome, but I would like to bring to your notice an unintended probably measure that you initiated for matchboxes. Sir, a company located in Maharashtra, in one of my friend's constituency who is not present here, the workers have sent a representation that this measure of not bringing this particular match industry in constituency also, this match industry. It is not taken out, it is not de-read out. As a result of this particular company is likely to close down. The workers will be jobless. I'm sure my friends on the left will be very concerned about that.
You can also mention WIMCO.
Sir, Sampurna Gramin Rozgar Yojana, this year 100 crore mandate employment in a year was the target. Last year the budget was 9,639 crores. This year it is 4,590 crores. The other day the finance minister explained to Mr. Upchan Pal that this is you should compare B with B and not RE with B. But sir, when we talk about it, in your own budget speech, you have mentioned when we are talking about fiscal deficit, the revenue deficit and the deficit, you are talking about the deficit as compared to the revised figure. So obviously when you are taking the revised figure of the combination, when you are taking a scheme by scheme, comparing it with the RE with this budget estimate is also an appropriate thing. And so therefore I would request as to how we will be able to create 100 days employment without making adequate provision when you must keep in mind, sir, when this government was in office, 1994 to 2000, the employment growth was 1.07%. The employment growth during 2000 to 2002 has been 2.07%, and this is the figure which is in the economic survey. So obviously this is something which has been corroborated, and therefore I am using that figure. So fifth objective, growth in agriculture. So we all strongly support it. Agriculture is the most important economy. We are still an agrarian economy, though we are only 24% of GDP. More than 60% people live on it. And this is the root cause of poverty, because only 60% people share 24% revenue, whereas the 40% people share the remaining 76% of the revenue. So increase in that is most welcome. But so what is the strategy? So what is the new deal? The new deal is repackaging of the old scheme. Welcome what you have done, the excise relief is most welcome, we welcome it. But the gross fixed capital formation is now 1.3% of the GDP. So in spite of this, it is not there. So when we are talking about doubling of credit, And sir, I will just try to tell you. So this is something which we must...
I hate to interrupt your beautiful, most important speech, but how long will you take? It just want to know.
Just some time. Sir, I am just come to agriculture, which is most important, closer to your heart. So I am just... Sir,
Yes.
so doubling of credit, when we are talking like this, sir, there are 4 institutions through which the credit will be doubled. Sir, what is the situation of that? It's not a credit which is an issue. In fact, if you look at it, sir, in the last